for that.
Okay.
Money changer.
So my presentation is on rent control. Here's this little graph. I'll get more into it later, but it essentially kind of shows where how they calculate rent control. They calculate do it every year. They calculate how much should be the maximum upgrade in the pricing. I'll get more into it later, but that's just the first picture. So what prompted the creation of rent control? Initially, like super early in both World War, First World War I, there was a lot of resource shortages, and so between 1919 and 1924, they issued these price maximums in order to be able to have people be able to afford these housing because of the limited number, and because of the limited number of people dropping the prices, because you can when there's a lot of demand, as we learned from yesterday's supply and demand presentation. And then it was more specific, more directly created officially after World War II, when Nixon introduced the price and wage controls, basically mandating minimum wages and maximum prices for stuff and stuff like that. And California rent control was started in the late 20th century, at a very similar time to when Prop 13 was started, which I guess Michelle will talk about later. And yeah, so the system California uses is very similar to the one New York uses, and New York has been using it for a while more. And I say New York, it's actually New York State, which has about 13 different cities and towns using rent control. Like New York City is one that does, which is like 90% of all the people using New York State, if that makes sense. So essentially all it means is it's a way to keep long-term residents in their homes more solidly, so that they can't just kind of be removed or changed by the whim of some of the landlord. So a good kind of example of this is like if someone had been living in their house since Doghouse, for example, since 1980s, when it was not that high end, and now it's just starting to be high end. They're raising prices, but they don't want to have people that have been living in the house and know all their neighbors and it's been living there for 20 years kicked out. So it essentially means you can only be removed for just reasons or when your contract is up. So the amount of increase right now is 1.6% per year. That the rent can increase every year is determined by the Rent Control Board. They use different things to determine that based on the inflation, but they do that off of insurance prices, average insurance prices, and gas prices and known quantities that fluctuate. So that's how they kind of get their idea. It's pretty much stayed around 1.6 in the past 10 years. It's gone up or down, well, 0.5%, but it's pretty much, half of the 0.5%, so 1.65 or 1.7-ish, but pretty much around that same area. So those are really the downsides for them, like I said. The landlord's upset, they don't really want to upkeep the property, they don't really care, and no improvement, obviously, but oftentimes they actually fall into disrepair because as long as you keep the basics of what they had when they started, like running water, electricity, parking, stuff, all the basics, they don't really have any grounds the renters don't have any grounds to lower the rent, even if the quality of it is diminished, but if they have them in general, it doesn't count. I'm not sure if you can see it, but here's kind of an interesting chart of if you actually can have, if your property does apply. It's not end all be all. Some areas, even if you do apply, it doesn't actually still don't apply. But you kind of can go down this whole list and see if you are eligible or not. Kind of interesting. So a big question that is deciding about rent control, and a funny thing is that rent control sounds really good by politicians and it sounds really good in writing. So voters are always vote for it because it sounds good and it sounds like a fair option, even though it doesn't always work that well. So a big question is, does it work? And as you can see, the average prices still go up, even though there is these controls. And as we said with loopholes earlier, if they really want to get you out, there's ways to do it. A big loophole is actually saying you want to renovate the building, that's new construction, and then you can raise rents then, and stuff like that. And you can see, even though like housing prices still gone up pretty even with these are all rent controlled areas, have still gone up gradually, except for 2008 when the market crashed. But it still is has an upward trend. So it doesn't entirely work. It's not great for either people there. Yeah.
But is rent control supposed to lower or control? I mean, this is the price of the house.
That's just regular.
That's the value of the property, right? Part of it is just going up because of inflation. Part of it is going up because the market is hot, whatever, right? Especially if you're rent control. You said you're rent control in an environment where the market there's a very low, very small amount of available housing, right? So that's going to make any housing that much more expensive and appealing, right? Why would rent control change the price of the property?
It doesn't change the price of property. It changes what they are, changing what they're worth, which means that as the prices still go up, the landlords will figure out ways to get people out and be able to re-rent them.
Okay.
And what we've done about it, there's a bunch of different kind of thinkings about what we've done about it. One is where they have a form of rent control, but beforehand it's not as mandated by it's not as much mandated by that court, but not the court, the board, but more it's decided on before. These are a bunch of just theories I've read of people have proposing different ideas. But like the inflation, the upgrade rate, the price rate can be actually negotiated and have contracts before they actually take the property. It's a very hard issue, and there's a lot of people that run for mayor and run for different positions based on how they deal with rent control. But yeah. Maddie?
How would you propose would you not be in favor of keeping rent control? Because rent control to me seems like a great way. Not everybody has really high income salaries, and not everybody can afford to live in San Francisco, even if their jobs are in San Francisco. And I think rent control is kind of a great, it doesn't work for everyone. Maybe the landlords don't have enough power, or maybe people can't get their new fancy furnishings, but it seems like a great way that teachers who teach in the Bay Area and other workers who have lower income salaries to be able to live in the Bay Area with control over their houses and raise a family in a nice area. It seems.
Yeah, no, definitely. It works for a lot of people. And I read an interesting article about this person who basically lived in San Francisco her whole life and then had to move out because the rent was too high when more people were moving in. Now she lives in Oakland. And so what she was kind of saying was that a big thing that could help was to keep rent control, but make it but actually build a lot more housing around in order to accommodate the more growth and not make housing such a limited resource, which would make landlords want to bring the pricing up. So if there's more housing and the prices weren't subject to so much change, then rent control would work, which would be just an added benefit, as well as there would be more housing to actually negate any of the negatives.
How is it selected, who gets rent control? If you're about to rent an apartment, do you apply to get it rent controlled, or?
But also, if the house was built before 1975,
It's not you. It's the house.
yeah.
You wouldn't call it a house. It's the apartment. If it meets the criteria, then it's rent controlled.
Oh,
so
this is a certain list of criteria. Okay.
Which the main criteria are: that it was built before 1979, and it's a unit in a multi-unit building. So a standalone house isn't even if it's built before 1979. Every apartment that was built before 1979 that is in a building with other units is rent controlled.
So even if you're rich, you can have rent control.
Sure.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how nice it is, it just matters the date and if it follows these criteria.
I think it's interesting, right? You could imagine a system, I don't know, just thinking about it. we definitely have some family friends who have rent control in Pacific Heights, who have no business having rent control, like their income is such that it's actually a farce that they have rent control. I mean, that, you know, like in terms of what it would look like if you had, if rent control was attached to maybe like a date by which the building, maybe it would have to be built before a certain date, maybe it would have to be a multi-family house, and it'd be attached to your income. So if your income is above a threshold, and the city can get to decide what that threshold is, right? That maybe you automatically get rent control, but if your income is above a certain amount, then you don't.
But
Because
then the landlords would be incentivized not to rent to people who.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but as it is, I'm not sure the landlords have a lot of incentive to. Actually, the landlords, even with rent control, have an incentive to kick people out because every time they renew
yeah,
the
every time
lease,
there's a new renter.
every time they renew the lease, so they have an incentive to kick people out no matter what. But at least, I don't know if that would.
But there's no preference for who they, when they need to rent to
Totally.
somebody new.
Yeah.
It can be anybody
Yeah.
who's gonna pay the rent. Is there more? So can you go back to that very, very first slide? Because I think that answers Maddie's question, because that's kind of the obvious question. It's like, well, this is good for people to have to pay less rent. The problem is, if you make the rent lower, what does that do to how many units get rented?
More
units
people
get
want
rented.
Even more people want to move in because the rent is cheap, but what happens to the supply?
Goes
to
down.
goes down.
It goes down because there are less landlords who
Well, that's
make
like,
it
well, that's
think
the
it's
whole,
worthwhile.
that's the whole problem in the Bay Area with displacement and with everything, is there's such limited housing and everybody's competing for it and more people are coming. So that's just kind of a universal problem right now.
Yes, but I think this exacerbates it.
Yeah,
So that rent-controlled housing stock, if you're not going to make a lot of money off of it, you could just sit on it and not rent it to anybody, or have your nephew live in it, and then somebody doesn't get to have a place to live.
In a large multi-house.
It doesn't have to be a large, it just has to have 2 units.
Two units.
Most houses most like buildings have 2 units now.
Yeah, like the Sunset lot in Richmond, lots and lots of houses there's like a garage level and one apartment and another apartment.
And then you could
Those are all rent
get all
control.
the amenities basically of having, or you would have lower taxes
If what?
if you had this rent controlled place and you were just letting whatever your nephew live in.
If you just don't feel like you're gonna make much money off of it, like why bother?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people have them but aren't renting them out.
Well,
We have to
if
look
the price
into
is
the
down,
numbers, but the laws of supply and demand would suggest
Yeah.
that you're gonna have fewer, or that people will sell them for
'Cause they
owners to
lose-
move into.
Yeah, because they'd lose money on that.
Right, like if you have somebody who lives in a rent-controlled place for 20 years, and you're only making $300 a month, how's that worth it?